So if we look at the history of CSB, to date, what we've done is we've built a strong foundation over the past 7 years. We've got strong clubs, stable clubs, we've got stable attendances, we've got stable revenue streams, and we're in a strong position. But our mission going forward as we enter 2026 is evolving. Our mission will evolve. And we're ready to lead, and I want to make that point clear. We're ready to modernise the way in which we market and monetize the game of soccer in Canada. We're ready to enhance and invest in player pathways through the many clubs that we oversee, both in the CPL and also the League Ones. We're ready to elevate the level of fan experience, and we're ready to ensure that as we hit 2026, the World Cup, this big tournament, doesn't just come and go before us. We're not just supporting the game, we are building its future with purpose and with ambition, and ultimately, over the next 12 to 14 months, we want to ensure that we're linking in every way possible the local game to the global game. And I want to talk about that local global connection because I want to talk about it in the context of the World Cup. The 2025 CPL final, it's not just an ordinary time, it's an extraordinary period for the game here in Canada. It's extraordinary because the World Cup will touch down in about 8 months, and we know that it's the world's biggest tournament that will be played on our fields and on our shores across the country. It is the biggest sporting event in the world, and I want to just spend a little moment talking about what that means, because we all know that that's the case. The whole country here came together for the Major League Baseball World Series over the past few weeks. It was a great time. It brought the community together. And if we look at what it did and we look at some of the numbers that we can measure that competition by, the final reached an average audience of 51 million people globally. The World Cup in 2022, that was, of course, hosted in Qatar, not the best time zone for world attendance, saw an average audience in the final of 570 million people. There were 5 billion people over 5 weeks that engaged in that competition. So that's the scale of the competition that's coming to these shores next year. I saw it firsthand in Australia, leading Australian football in 2023 with the Women's World Cup. And what I know from firsthand experience is tournaments like this bring unity, they bring energy, and they bring the ability for a sport to transform in the year of hosting a World Cup. So for us, for Canadian soccer business, for the CPL, the moment before us is all about transformation. And what that means is that right now, prior to the World Cup, we're focused on creating as many associations as possible to the World Cup. When we get to the World Cup and during the World Cup, we're going to be focused on riding the wave of the World Cup. And then once the World Cup comes and goes, we're going to be focused on converting the interest that will be created in Canada, ensure that that interest is continued beyond the World Cup through the CPL in Canada. The World Cup needs to be the starting point, right? It's not the finish line, and it needs to be the launch pad for Canadian soccer business, for the broader Canada soccer and for the CPL going forward. I want to talk a little bit about what the opportunity means on the ground and in practice. The opportunity can also be a challenge because when a tournament, when a competition like the FIFA World Cup comes to a country, it will really put a magnifying glass on the opportunities, of course, for the game, but also on the challenges for the sport as well. And we need to be transparent about some of the challenges across the sport and across the league that we are facing. We need to move away from difficult relationships with Canada Soccer. The bickering of the past needs to stay in the past. We need to move beyond that. That's a challenge for us. We need to ensure that our brands across the country, whether that be the CPL or the national teams that we are responsible for monetising, whether it's the League One or whether we're supporting the NSL, that these brands, these football brands, get cut through in the mainstream media. We need to ensure that we are taking responsibility and building strategic partnerships around the country. We will sort Canada Soccer out, but also building strategic relationships with other competitions, like our future partner, the NSL. We need to ensure that the hosting of a World Cup isn't just an opportunity, and that we use it as an opportunity to solve the many challenges that we have. But I want to be really clear that transforming a sport and a league and using a World Cup, it doesn't happen by accident. It happens with strategy, it happens with vision, and it happens with the ability to bring that vision and that strategy to life. It's a deliberate action, it's not by chance. And that's why last month we put out a vision publicly. We released a vision for Canadian soccer business, and it's a framework where we're heading, and it also sets a pathway for how we're going to get there. Now, you may ask why we did this, and I just want to talk you through why we released our vision. We released it because we wanted to create direction, we wanted to create focus, and we wanted to create clarity around things that are important to us. We wanted to be transparent, and we wanted to build trust, and we wanted to build authentic trust with the millions of Canadians that play soccer every year, and the millions more that watch soccer in Canada every year as well. We want to be accountable. We know that what we're doing, well, you know what we're doing because we've written it and we've put it out publicly, and we want to be accountable in case we don't do what we say we're going to do. We want to be measured because high-performing teams like to be measured, because good measurement, good accountability creates high performance. And we're in sport, and that's what sport is all about. It's about performing at your highest level, and we need to do the same off the pitch. And we want feedback. We have released the vision as a living document, and I want to underline the word living because we don't have all the best ideas at headquarters. We want to ensure that we get strong feedback, constructive feedback from the football community, from commercial partners, from broadcasters, from Canada Soccer, from players, from coaches, so that we can continue to adapt and evolve the vision to something that is fit to be brought to life. The core of our vision is very clear. We will build the world's first integrated soccer hub. So what this means is it brings our clubs, our leagues, both the leagues that we operate, but also the leagues and the football properties of which we own together. It means that bringing the whole soccer economy together in one place. And this is something that is an opportunity for a country like Canada to do, because it doesn't have it doesn't have a place where the typical and the long-standing structures are in place. It's an opportunity to actually do something new, which other countries that have perhaps had structures in place for a long time aren't able to do. It's a huge opportunity. And this is healthy for the game. It's healthy for us. It's healthy for our participants. It's healthy for our fans to do something different and transformational. But at the heart of everything that we do, and this is core to the vision, is the CPL and also our League Ones. And I wanted to touch, of course, on the CPL and the season that we've just completed. We've just completed, or we will just complete on Sunday, our 7th season. Through our partnership with TSN alone, we've reached 1.7 million Canadians through a shift to linear broadcast. We've set new league records of attendance. Forge this year had 17,971 attendance record in May. Halifax Wanderers, who invested in their infrastructure and their stadiums, they had an attendance record this year of 7,049. Cavalry established a new regular season record, an attendance of 5,114. There's been 9% more tickets sold this time in the CPL finals as there were last year at the same time. Cavalry made history this year in the CONCACAF Champions Cup by becoming the first CPL to beat a top-flight Mexican side. This year, 3 teams have qualified for the CONCACAF Champions Cup: Forge Vancouver and the winner of Sunday's final match. Vancouver sold 16-year-old Grady McDonald for the second largest transfer fee in our history to Club Bruges this season. And FC Supra's arrival expands the CPL into a strategic market for CSB. Let's not forget our League Ones that we operate. There are a lot of player pathway stories that occurred in 2025, particularly on the women's game, and I want to touch on that. Olivia Smith, a product of League One, became the first Canadian woman to transfer for £1 million to Arsenal. That was a landmark story, a landmark narrative for the women's game globally. AFC Toronto's Kaylee Hunter enjoyed a breakout season in the NSL, another product of League One, and got her first call up to the Canadian women's national team this year. More than 60 women in the NSL that kicked off this year have ties to our League One, so I wanted to also recognise our League One in the 2025 season. The CPL and League One is right at the heart of everything that we do, and this weekend we're not just crowning a champion, but we're celebrating the leagues that have moved from what I would call a startup to a mature league structure in 2025. I'd like to take a moment now to talk about what's next, because our next year is going to be transformation. It's not going to be incremental change. We're going to shift our focus from being league-focused to becoming a true league ecosystem and a hub that brings the soccer economy in Canada together. This will require a change. It will require a change in how we approach things and also how we think. In recent weeks, you will have seen CPL move into the Montreal area with the announcement of Super FC. You've seen, and we've talked about, the release of our living vision. You've seen the appointment of a new Chief Commercial Officer in Mike Beckerman, who's very well known across corporate Canada. You've seen a new league-wide kit deal with Hummel, and this is just the beginning. In the coming weeks and months, you're going to see the further strengthening of our internal team at CSB with the appointment of a Chief Marketing Officer that will be focused on growing and getting the cut-through in mainstream media that we believe our game deserves. You'll see strategies to ensure our soccer in Canada is seen by the greatest number of Canadians as possible, including a stronger emphasis as we enter 2026 on linear TV. You'll see a renewed relationship with Canada Soccer that will really transform Canada Soccer and also its national team programs. You'll see strategies to inspire corporate Canada because we want them to believe in soccer and we want them to turn their brand power and their marketing budgets into helping us lift the level of Canadian soccer properties. You're going to see stronger connections between the CPL and League One. You saw the Hummel deal that went out yesterday, but you'll see changes to the way in which we talk about the leagues and also the way in which the CPL and League One have a aligned marketing and branding strategy. You're going to see next year us talk a lot about the modernising of player transfers across the country. There's a great opportunity here because Canada develops world-class talent, but some of our challenges have been our ability to ensure that we can retain transfer fees that happen in the international market so it can inject important funds into the economy in Canada. And you're going to see us live a clear legacy strategy, one that connects us to the World Cup and the lead-up, one that allows us to ride the wave of the World Cup, and one that ensures that the interest that's created in Canada because of the World Cup continues through the CPL and League One as the World Cup leaves in 2026. We also talk about media, and media is an important part of our business. I talked earlier about what we were doing on the field, and I want to talk a little bit now about what we're doing off the field as it relates to media. The vision as it relates to media is very clear in the document that we released last month. Media and storytelling are our amplifier. Business is our fuel. But I want to talk about what that actually means. It means that we will increase the brand awareness of the national teams, the CPL, and any other rights we own. We are committed to doing that, and you'll see us doing that in 2026. It means increasing the overall visibility and the brand of the sport. This year you saw a shift to linear. Next year you'll see it more. You will see us more in mainstream media, whether that be newspapers, locally, globally, or broadcast. It means digital engagement like you haven't seen before. We're hiring a new CMO, as I mentioned before, for that purpose. It means more soccer content being centralised for our soccer fans in Canada. This is why, again, we are about to renew a deal with our partners CONCACAF. We already own those rights. We will renew it for a long-term deal. And I also want to give you a little bit of a scoop that we'll announce very shortly, and that is that we will be acquiring the Bundesliga rights for the remainder of this year and also next year. And that is a living example of bringing our vision to life, where we talked about bringing soccer properties in Canada together to make it easier for consumers and fans to consume. There's a natural link, of course, to our national team captain, who's about to come back and play for Bayern Munich, and we want to ensure that we've got the ability to connect through Alfonso, through Bayern Munich, as he sets upon his journey back to returning to the national team and therefore connecting us to the World Cup. So that will be announced very shortly. With all that said, I want to finish where I started. And just emphasise again that this is no ordinary time. The 26th World Cup will be the biggest World Cup in our history. It's our opportunity, and we will optimise the impact. We've built the foundation. We have a stable, competitive league. We have stable attendance. We have new markets that are coming on board. We have strong player pathways through CPL and League One. Now it's time to take the next step, ladies and gentlemen. We're assembling a first-class team at CSB with key appointments that will continue to be made. We're modernising our competition structures with the CPL and League Ones that will be aligning over the next couple of months. We're growing soccer following Canada Soccer in the mainstream. So we're going to grow our following of Canada Soccer in the mainstream, including by a stronger shift to linear TV as we enter 2026. We'll strengthen the business of soccer in Canada through new and improved revenue streams, hence our appointment of a new Chief Commercial Officer. And we're striving, of course, for a new deal with Canada Soccer, which we will do. It's going to be a new era for our relationship with Canada Soccer. Things are working much better on the ground. And our focus in 2026 will be continuing to bring that relationship to life. We're moving from centralising Canada soccer rights to centralising soccer rights in Canada, and examples like Bundesliga will continue to happen. And we will be articulating and living a strategy for the World Cup. We won't just be talking about it. So together, ladies and gentlemen, with our owners, with our partners, with our clubs, with our media, with our players, with our coaches, and with our fans, we are going on a journey, and we are asking you to join us. Thank you very much for listening to this address. Enjoy the CPL final and have a great day.
Thank you very much, James. We will open the questions to the room. AJ?
How do you convert, I guess, the people that I know that are going to watch the World Cup to start coming to Atletico Ottawa games or Ford games or whatever, and even my soccer buddies that come to maybe 1 or 2 games a year that'll be there on Sunday to get them to go to 6 to 10 a year.
It's a very good question. I'm a British Australian citizen, and Britain, of course, soccer is part of the DNA. Australia is very similar to Canada in that it's a very competitive sports market with 4 or 5 other sports that often take the limelight away from soccer. I think what we saw during the Women's World Cup in Australia is a good example. 70% of the Australian population watched a World Cup semi-final. That was more people than actually watched humans enter the moon. Now, why was that possible? I'll explain that because it's exactly what we're going to do here. Stories and narrative need to be connected in the lead up to the World Cup. That's important. So whether it's a broadcast acquisition strategy like the acquisition of the Bundesliga rights, it's not just Bundesliga, it's attaching our brands to the World Cup. And it's on us to ensure that in the lead up to the World Cup over the next 7 months, everything we're doing connects us to the World Cup so that when the World Cup comes, there's a strong connection between the CPL, the national teams, and the World Cup. And I believe during the World Cup, there will be a swell like that we've never seen in this country before in sport. I believe that there will be the soccer community that comes together, but there will be a much larger community of soccer fans that actually don't know they love soccer until the World Cup comes. And our opportunity at that point is to ensure that those stories that we're creating now carry us through and that the CPL becomes the harbour, if you like, of the World Cup interest when the World Cup leaves. It'll come and go. It'll be 6 weeks. It'll be not just a competition. It'll be a celebration, and we need to make sure that we maintain that interest, and that interest has to be carried through the CPL because the CPL is the league that connects to the community week in, week out, and it will carry on long after the World Cup comes and goes.
David?
Well, it's good to see you again, and thank you for Lo's excellent address. I want to ask you about League One, as someone who's covered much of the league this year, regular roundups. We've seen so much improvement on the League One side in the last 2 to 3 years of promotional relegation in Ontario and Quebec. You have BC and Alberta with their leagues now. I know there's talk about Prairies and everything. I'm going to kind of hopefully soon joining that. What are some of the things you're hoping to see changed in most on the League One side to make it improve that potential that I know you definitely can see going forward?
I think there's some immediate ones. So what we're talking about internally is connecting the leagues and creating an ecosystem. We operate 2 League Ones at the moment, but we're talking about how we create stronger alliances, alignment and partnerships with Quebec in particular, and also Alberta. You're going to see a change in brand and tone as it relates to League One. We're not ready to announce that yet, but the work is being done. And essentially, before next CPL season kicks off and before League One's kick off next year, you'll have an alignment on name and brand of League One, and that's something that we'll be doing as a first step. Second step is to expand the footprint. Stronger connections with Alberta and Quebec, as I said, but we're also going to start looking at how those competitions, province by province, could somehow come together and participate at a national level. Works early, but that's where we'd like to get to.
Just a follow-up. Again, I know you've been very focused on the World Cup for next year. I want to ask you, as someone who follows the global game quite a lot, we've seen several countries host, like Qatar and South Africa over the last 15 years. I focus on those in particular because they're being smaller, strong on the continental scene, not as much on the global scene. So I want to ask you, obviously, co-hosting with the U.S. and Mexico, who are more renowned on global sense domestically. What were some aspects you feel like Canada's behind that you really want to catch up and using this World Cup to allow it to happen, get that exposure?
I think it's just making sure there's belief. Is my answer. I mean, the ingredients, they're all here. strong CPL that's going from strength to strength, a new NSL, a women's national team they've been world champions, a men's national team that are getting better every year because of this great group of still what are relatively young players. I think the ingredients are there. Big participation base is another one. I think it's believing that the World Cup can create a swell like Canada has never seen before in sport. And secondly, it's vision and its strategy and ensuring that we all understand that it doesn't happen by accident, because there are countries like Qatar that whatever people want to say about that World Cup, it transformed the nation, but it was done with strategy. Yet there are countries that have hosted that the World Cup's come and gone, and it's been a great memory, a great month of soccer, but it hasn't changed the face of the sport. So I think it's being very clear and deliberate and articulating in a very focused way what we will be doing to ensure that we are able to transform, and then being able to deliver it during the World Cup, and then making sure we can capture it beyond it. And rest assured, that's what me and the team in HQ are focused on doing, and we'll be talking about it more and more, and you'll see more connection, just like today, where we're connecting the CPL to the 2026 FIFA World Cup so that it becomes a legacy story beyond the 26 World Cup.
Adam Jenkins with OneSoccer. I understand that this document is still very nascent and there will be more time for more feedback, but it's a pretty big presentation to offer to the various communities that we've done. What has the feedback been like working with those various stakeholders in terms of what we as the Canadian soccer community want from them, and what perhaps they're willing to offer and what it might take to get there?
It's the feedback we've got to date, and I want to start that by we're still in the midst of the process, so we're not by any means at the end. I think it's been very positive. Actually, it's like hypothesis testing, right? You're putting out a hypothesis. We're talking about how we see the world. And then we've had a lot of engagement since. There's been a lot of interest from broadcasters. The Bundesliga rights, for example, I'm not sure if that opportunity would have come up as quickly as it did once we said very clearly that we want to acquire rights of leagues that have great Canadians playing in them. So it's really created, I think, a good awareness. We still want feedback, and I want to make that point clear with this question, because when we finalise the vision, and we're going to do that by the end of this year, we're going to live by it. And everything that we do at HQ is going to be focused on bringing that vision to life, whether that be our corporate strategy, the way in which we do our budgeting for the year 2026 and beyond. It will be our Bible, so to speak. So the message is clear. We want feedback. Give it to us. It'll be used to change the document, provided it's constructive, because it's a document that we want to live by and we want our community to be proud of.
And during your address, you spoke of the challenges and opportunities we face here. I know this probably goes well beyond football, but when you speak to Canadian sport, players, consumers, viewers, one of the things that is always a desire is for improving infrastructure across the country, and that's not just football, but from where you sit, leading kind of the soccer business, what can the group do to try to push that along and improve for existing facilities? I know the Wanderers want to get another facility built. How can the CSB assist it, and maybe what have you learned in your role here on where we can go with that?
I believe there needs to be a national legacy strategy. Now, there's probably a debate about who should lead that. I see our role as being a constructive partner. We will have our views, and we're already developing those views on the kind of infrastructure projects that are important for CPL. Of course, we want to see more grass fields. We want to see bigger stadiums, soccer-specific stadiums in some of the bigger markets that allow us to expand into. But ultimately, that needs to be brought together, I believe, in a unified strategy across Canada, of which we want to be part of, and we want to be a constructive partner in that discussion.
Anybody else?
One of them I want to ask you about, James, and it's not been brought up this, surprisingly, the Canadian Championship. I can remember the times when there were just these tournaments, when it seemed like 5 when, the League One, Ontario Quebec champions, and sure now we're at a state where there'll be presumably 16 next year. Obviously, we can see so much of League One growing, but towards the Canadian Championship, how do you want to see? Are plans to expand even further to see more teams? I know Tommy Wilson Jr. has mentioned the fact that he would love to see all League One teams entering the competition. I agree with that perspective. But what are the plans on that as well?
Well, look, the competition organiser is Canada Soccer, so ultimately it is a decision for Canada Soccer. I would like personally to see some changes to the calendar of it. More matches on weekends. I think weekend football is really where you drive a lot of interest. I'd like to see some reconsideration of the date of the final. I think that's a strategic decision. And ultimately, that brings a broader calendar conversation with the CPL and also the MLS teams who participate in it. But broadly speaking, I see this as a huge opportunity to grow. It's a competition that can bring Canada together, Canadian soccer together, and it's a competition that our clubs love, and it's a competition that we want one of our clubs to win, not just make a final, and that's something that we'll be striving for going forward.
Aaron, just one question. When talking to casual sports supporters or people who love football in the Canadian landscape, kind of going off AJ's question, I'm curious. There's sometimes a bit of a confusion of where the Canadian Premier League stands on the landscape of soccer within North America. Is the Canadian Premier League team going to go to the MLS eventually? Where does that stand? And this is from, not of course the soccer community who really understands it, but from the general public. And I like the vision of Canadian football kind of going more to the mainstream, especially with the Canadian Premier League and linking that to the World Cup. But what does that mean concretely to have this league be seen as the national first division in all its aspects, and really that confusion amongst the general public kind of being removed with the comparison to the League Cup?
Yeah, I think look, it is the national first division in Canada. I think it's a great question, though. I think it's the visibility, which is the challenge, and I'm aware of that. And for me, how you change visibility, which is it's just a challenge, right? It just means you have to solve it. It's science. For me, being honest and transparent about the challenge and then addressing it in the right way is the way we actually fix it. So how do we fix it? In my view, it's more focus on linear broadcast. That doesn't mean that we don't do anything digitally, like we do both. It means more stories in the mainstream. It means more tying together of global football content to local football content. Why? Because we know that people in Canada love global football. We know it. We see it with the numbers when the Premier League plays, or when the Champions League plays, or when World Cups are played. So tying CPL to those leagues, to the Bundesliga, for example, that will be important. Being better storytellers. We have great athletes that do great things, and we need to tell those stories because the younger generation, they're not just watching 90 minutes of football. They love the people that sit behind the athlete, and we need to make sure that we can tell those stories, and we're in a position through OneSoccer to do that. So there are some practical examples that gets brought together. with a strong marketing strategy. That's why I've deliberately wanted to make one of my first appointments a CMO who will be a globally recognised CMO who's done this before, who's built great soccer brands in global football, and that'll be announced by the end of November. And it's also why we brought in a chief commercial officer earlier on, because if we're trying to break through in the mainstream media, another practical way to do that is to work with your partners and see them as vehicles to really tell stories and amplify your sport. We've got some amazing partners that we have on board, and I think we're only at the start of what we can do with them. They can tell great stories, they can get to the community, and they're our partners at the end of the day. So they are some practical examples of how we create better visibility for the CPL and what we'll be doing leading into 2026.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to what you said about CanChamp and the final. Is there an ideal time frame or dates that you'd like for the final?
Look, I think you've got to look at this question holistically, and I think the natural way forward would be to play the Canadian Championship right at the end of the season. I think that's a nice way to tie competitions together. Now, there's a lot of reasons for not doing that, but I do think that makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, that's one view. It's ultimately a decision for Canada Soccer. But if I was running that competition, that would be something that I would be pushing very strongly, because I think that's the moment that the whole country comes together under a competition, whether an MLS team or a CPL team, and I think that's very healthy.
Any questions on Zoom? If you have a question, please raise your hand. Josh, go ahead.
Perfect. Josh Healy. One question that I wanted to ask concerned PFA Canada. In the past, Mark Noonan sort of declined to discuss labor negotiations in public. Is there any update that you can kind of give us concerning PFA Canada and CSP?
I'm not going to decline, but I just want to say it's not the relations between the national team players and Canada Soccer is bilateral. So the way we can play a constructive role is by working closely with Canada Soccer. They're our partner, and I can talk to that, and I will. I've made an effort since being in the role to really focus on enhancing our relationships with Canada Soccer, and I can say with full confidence that that's been reciprocated by Canada Soccer. The way things are working on the ground are in great shape. I believe we've still got a lot of work to do because we have to renew our agreement, which we're in the process of doing. But I do want to say that agreements, at the end of the day, they're a piece of paper, and they're words. They're just written down. What's important in any partnership, in my view, that I've been in, whether that's that's a contractual relationship, whether that's a marriage, whether that is a legal relationship, it's actually the spirit and the culture around the partnership that is ultimately important. And right now, that's what we're focused on. I speak to Kevin almost every other day. We're both working towards the same goal, and that is to put both our organisations in a position where we can create a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And we've come a long way, and that's what I'll say about that.
Just a follow-up then. Can you kind of parse how that relates to the Canadian Premier League players and the union that was created?
We've got a great relationship with our union. I was fortunate enough to meet the CEO of the union only a few weeks back. We're in discussions about a collective bargaining agreement, and ultimately we'll get one done. We care about our players. A union has a really important role to play in a soccer ecosystem. I've worked in a players union before, and they are a really important partner of ours. So we will focus on doing a collective bargaining agreement. It's a priority for us. We We want the players to perform on the pitch, but we want them to be great people off the pitch, and we want our union to be partners of ours going forward. They already are partners, but they'll be partners under a CBA over the next 12 months.
Does anybody else have any
Thank you.
questions on Zoom? No? Anyone in the room? No? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Good afternoon.